After my diagnosis, I did seek out independent information, not a lot. At that time, it was 17 years ago. The internet wasn't as readily available as it is now, but I did research some with it and tried to figure out on my own some information about it because it was such a shock at that age. Right. Yeah. As far as everyone being aware or awareness of breast cancer, at that young of age, I don't think that everyone is aware of it. I think it needs to be pushed more, and younger girls need to be aware that it can happen at any age, not just past your 40s. Because of my age, they actually told me that they felt like it was maybe just a water cyst and just to keep an eye on it. And so I actually went on with life and didn't think too much about it for a while. I actually suspected it. I found it in my own exams, and so I suspected something was wrong, and then I contacted my doctor's office. My family reacted very well, but shocked and surprised. I'm the youngest of 9. I have 5 older sisters, and so it was very, very shocking. My baby was 18 months old. My daughter was 18 months old at the time, and so it was a devastating diagnosis. It was something that was not on the radar for us, and it was something that we didn't think we'd have to face. I was fairly newlywed, and yeah, it was shocking and difficult. I didn't know anything about breast cancer before I was diagnosed. I didn't have any grandmothers that had it. My sisters were older than me. None of them had it, and so it was a shock. It was something that I hadn't even thought about having happen in my life. I was diagnosed. My provider gave me some pamphlets and some information at that point, but there wasn't a lot of information for what I was diagnosed with and at my young age. And so I did feel like at that point I was trying to figure it out on my own and trying to understand what I was facing at that point. I had to champion my own health care. I had to go forward with it because of my young age. They were not believing that it possibly could be cancer. I didn't have it in my family. It was not hereditary. I didn't have a grandmother or any of my older sisters that had it, and they were beyond their 40s at that point. And so I really, really had to take it in my own hands to push for my mammogram. I did push for a mammogram with my young age, and them telling me that it probably wasn't breast cancer. I felt like inside I knew something was not right, so I pushed to get the mammogram at that point. I started noticing and feeling that it felt a little bit larger, and so I went in once again and asked them to check it. And once again, they had told me that it probably was just a water cyst with my young age and that I should probably just keep an eye on it. But because we had been trying to get pregnant with our second child, it was probably hormonal. And so once again, I went away and let it go, but I kept an eye on it, and it kept growing. And so at that point is when I went in and said, I want a mammogram. I need to know what's going on. For me, I think the best advice I could give someone that's newly diagnosed or going through it is to set your mind to what you want your outcome to be. It may not be that, but if you can set your mind to that, to grab onto hope, to decide to leave your mark, then I think that will give you the strength, that anchor to move forward with what you have to face. I think always believing in yourself and knowing that you're stronger than you are. I know for me, I think I believed it, but I didn't know, but I found through it that your spirit is far stronger than your body. And if you decide to use that strength in your spirit, then it will take over and help you overcome whatever you need to go through for your physical with your treatments. And so I think my biggest advice would be just find your strength within and then tap into that. Use that as your anchor. Burdens that are existing for those that are diagnosed with cancer could be wide-ranging. I think financial burdens, trying to figure out how to pay for treatments, and then also emotional burdens, trying to figure out how you're going to deal with it and what support system you can use to help you get through it. And then, I think it just depends on someone's home life and where they're at and how it will affect the dynamic in their home life. And the support that I wish had been available, I think probably was available. I know my oncologist and doctors had spoken to me about speaking to therapists and people afterwards. I felt like because of my mindset and my support system at home and my loving husband and my children and family, that I was okay and that I didn't need to do that. I didn't really pursue that side of it and look into that side of it. In some ways, I do wish maybe I had pursued that more and looked into it a little more. But whatever helps someone get through something, they know, and will pursue it the way that will help heal them and come out of it. So if I had changed anything, maybe I would have looked more into that information from my doctor. For support, I turned directly to my family, and I turned directly to my faith. And I think that was the biggest two support systems that helped and pulled me through. And having those behind me and under me and lifting me. And that's where I found my peace and my support. Information about my treatment. Like I said, I was 23 years old. When I was diagnosed, they finally did a mammogram and then a biopsy. And I was diagnosed with stage 4. And at that point, I was told that I needed to do a mastectomy. So I told the doctors that we had been trying to get pregnant, that my daughter was 18 months old and we were trying to expand our family. And so they ran a pregnancy test before I went ahead with major reconstructive surgery, and I did the tram flap reconstruction. They had talked to me about the tram flap versus having an implant, and I felt like I was going to beat cancer and live longer than an implant, and I didn't want to have to change it out in 10 years, and so I went with the more aggressive surgery. I went ahead with the surgery, and it was a very long surgery, and then the healing part of it was very difficult. I had to sleep sitting up. I couldn't do a lot on my own. I had a lot of family that helped me because it was very difficult to move. And from there, then I healed from that and started my chemotherapy. I did 6 doses of Taxol, and along with the Herceptin, because it's a gene I have. And I got 5 doses into the 6th, and I told the doctors that I was gaining weight. And they'd say, well, you're on your steroids and you gain weight on chemotherapy now. And I just knew something was different, something was not right. And so I suspected that I may be pregnant. And so we ran a pregnancy test and it came back positive. And so I went to my oncologist to actually do my last dose of chemo. And I said to her, I think there's something you should know, I'm pregnant. And she was shocked. She thought that it was from recent. And so she sent me to a specialist, and they ran an ultrasound and found that I had been pregnant the whole time. I was 24 weeks along, but I had no amniotic fluid around the baby. He had no kidneys or bladder, and at that point they suggested possibly aborting or doing what we needed to move forward with my radiation. And I knew that it wasn't my choice to have the baby make it that long, and so we chose to try to save his life. And so we shielded the baby. I went ahead with my radiation, which I needed. And then that was week 24 that I started my radiation with the baby that I was pregnant. And they said if by week 28 I didn't have amniotic fluid to surround the baby, that his lungs would not develop. I guess they swallow it and then their lungs develop. So I would go in every week for non-stress tests on the baby, and they every week would say no change. we don't see any change. And at week 28, I remember just praying on the way in that there would be a change. And the doctor ran the ultrasound and said, I don't believe this. He says, you have absolutely normal amniotic fluid. The baby has kidneys, bladder, everything looks good. We just don't know if the baby got the fluid in time to develop his lungs. So at this point, I was done with my treatments, and I just started healing and heading into normal life. And I had the baby 6 weeks early, and the doctors had said he'd live a half hour, and he came out perfect. And he's 16 now, and is beautiful, and 4.0 student, and is involved in so many things and healthy. And I'm just grateful for good doctors that helped me through that and listened to what I wanted to do with it. And so with my treatment, I went through also being pregnant and trying to survive through that also. As far as the information that I was given, I think I was given the proper amount for what they had at the time for the treatments that I was given. Lingering side effects, I do have a few physical side effects. The beautiful thing is, from my treatments, my doctor suggested that I should use fitness and health the best way I possibly could. And that's when I found Zumba, which became a fitness format that I fell in love with. And I actually certified, and I teach, and I help people find their health, and in a beautiful, fun, energetic way. And so for me, that was a wonderful avenue to try to offset the side effects of coming out of chemotherapy and treatments. I do have lingering effects in my arm. I've got lymphedema from the lymph nodes that they took out and tested. So I have to treat that, which is pretty amazing that I can work out and do what I do. From that, I have a lot of pain in my neck from the radiation overburn. But those things are minimal to life and coming out of it and being here for my family and helping others have hope in fighting it. The emotional side of it, for me, it was different because I had an 18-month-old daughter, and I walked straight out of it with a newborn. And so my focus turned from not what I had been through, but what I had at home to fight for and to live for. And so the emotional side for me was healed through my children and my family. And so it's been a beautiful gift and a way to deal with the residual from my treatment. It made it difficult for the doctors to know exactly how to treat. There was no information at the time on the chemo and the Herceptin that I was on for someone that was pregnant and that young. So a lot of it was guessing, and good medicine, good treatment by doctors, good doctors that would listen and be willing to maybe do something a little different than the normal streamline, like my radiation. Like I said, they shielded the baby and did the best we could with that, not knowing what the outcome would be. And so I think a lot of things played into making it how I'm still here today and that my son's still alive. And I think it's a blessing. So I think you think it's all physical, which it's very physical. It's difficult. You're sick. You lose your hair. Especially young. That was very difficult for me. There's a lot of physical sides to it, but I think the hardest part that I didn't expect was the emotional. And I think a defining moment for me was right before I went into surgery for my mastectomy. My surgeon held my hand and he told me, "You fight this." And that's when I chose to fight it, and that there was no other choice.